Hi guys, Brian from Boas. A couple months ago I had a really nice morph litter. This was a cross between a Moonglow and an IMG hypo, het for call and anery. And today I want to give you guys an update about this litter and show you guys some of the babies. And so this guy is the father. This is a Moonglow, beautiful triple gene combo morph. And so the Moonglow is a combination of the call albino, the anerythristic, and the hypo or hypomelanistic. So the call albino removes the dark pigment, the melanin. The anerythristic removes the red and yellow pigment. And the hypo or hypomelanistic also has further effects on the melanin pigment as well as the saddle shape. Basically it affects the distribution of the melanin. And you have this beautiful, very pale yellow snake that resembles the glow of the moon, hence the term Moonglow. So I paired this one up with a IMG hypo, het for call and for anery. I'll show you her in a minute. But it got a lot of really beautiful babies, and I'm going to get up my close-up lens, show you some of the babies up close. But first I went to Morph Market, and Morph Market has a predictor that you can use to predict the outcomes of different crosses. You can put in the morph or the genotype of the mother and father, and it will tell you the probability of having different babies from different morphs. And when you're dealing with morphs involving multiple genes, it gets really complicated pretty quickly. So it helps to have a calculator like this. And I'll show you here, this is the result of the morph calculator. You can see there are 32 different possibilities. And each one is slightly different in terms of the morph it is. You know, in some cases we're talking about hets. So you're not going to have the visible manifestation of the gene, but it's going to be carrying the gene for that morph. And so of course I didn't see all of these possibilities. I had a litter of 16 babies, so of course you're not going to see all the different possibilities because there's not enough babies. And the other issue is that these are just probabilities. It tells you, for example, there's a 3 out of 32 chance of getting this, right? So statistically 3 babies out of 32 should have this particular genotype or morph. And it's kind of like flipping a coin. There's some randomness to it. If you flip a coin 5 times, you could get 2 heads and 3 tails. You could get 4 heads and 1 tail. You could get 5 heads. You could get 2 tails and 3 heads, etc., etc., etc. So every time you do it, it's going to be a little bit different. But anyway, I want to show you guys some of the babies with my close-up lens. But first, let's take a quick look at the mother. Okay, here's the mother. She's a little bit nippy sometimes, so hopefully I don't get bitten. She's also in shed, so not a good chance of not drawing blood, but we'll see. Anyway, this is the female. She is a IMG hypo, and she's het for both call and for anery. So you can see she's really dark. And if I didn't know from her pictures as a baby she was a hypo, I probably wouldn't be able to tell. So the hypo IMGs are typically less dark than the non-hypos, but sometimes they do get really dark like this. Okay, so I actually put her back in the bag. I just don't want to chance it and stress out a snake that doesn't really like to be handled. So I'm not going to put her on camera again. It's just not a good idea. But hopefully you saw her. She's a hypo IMG. She's also het for both call and for anery. And het, of course, means heterozygous, meaning they carry one copy of the recessive gene, so they don't show the expression of the gene, the phenotype, but they do carry the gene, so they can give rise to babies that do have that phenotype, which is why we get so many possibilities in this particular litter. And so I'm going to take out my close-up lens, give you a look at some of my favorite babies from this IMG hypo crossed with Moonglow litter. I'm going to show some different IMG combos from the litter, and since a lot of people, myself included, have been somewhat confused about what the IMG gene represents, I'm going to try to illustrate some of the different characteristics. And so first, this is just a straight IMG, increasing melanin gene Boa. And as you can see, the number one feature are all the little speckles, all the little black flecking and freckles and markings. And this animal will only get darker. Each shed he's going to get a little bit darker. And then as an adult, he might be really dark, very jet black, glossy color with iridescence. Might have a little bit of markings remaining, but some of them do get almost pure black. Really impressive morph. And the thing about IMG that makes it a little confusing is it's not just a color morph, it's also a pattern morph. And if you look at the shape of the saddles, they're a little bit more pinched looking in the center. Almost like what the hypo does, but not quite as extreme. They just have this kind of pinched look. And as a result, the space between the saddles, the ground color, almost has this figure 8 appearance. You can see a more oval looking space between the two saddles. And if you look on the sides, it almost looks like a figure 8. And this is from the IMG gene. And so as a result, it can make it a little bit more difficult to differentiate the hypos from the non-hypos when you have IMG as well. Of course, with IMG, what happens is they get darker and darker with every shed. So if it's not obvious from the beginning like this guy, they should get more and more dark pigment with a few sheds. But you can see there's really no question that this animal is an IMG. And then I also should point out this animal is double het for both Call albino and for anerythristic, so he's carrying those genes and could pass them on to the offspring. So a really powerful animal genetically, this IMG double het Call and anery. Next we have a hypo IMG. And this animal, believe it or not, is the same exact genotype, same morph as the mother, who is obviously much darker. But when she started off, she looked like this too. You can see the hypo IMG, the main difference is the much lighter color. And but you can see all the dark pigments, all the little flecks between the saddles that has started already. And this female will just get darker and darker as she grows up. And then looking at the face, you can see all the markings on the head of the little flecks and the markings in the eye. And usually the IMGs will have kind of a dark marking horizontally through the eye. And that's about as close as I can get with this lens, but you can see the dark markings on the eye. And this female is particularly beautiful looking. Although, as I mentioned, she will look quite a bit different as an adult, but I just love the look of the head and how the eyes stand out. And this one, of course, is also het for both Call, albino, and anery, so really powerful animal genetically. Next, we have an anery IMG. So this one has the anery gene as well as the IMG, and this particular combo gets really dark, so this animal will be a lot darker when he reaches adulthood. And at first I thought this animal might be a ghost IMG. Ghost is the anery with the hypo, but he do have some litter mates who are actually ghosts, who are quite a bit lighter. I'll show you one of those in a sec. So I'm pretty convinced this guy is the anery, not the hypo slash ghost IMG. And if you look at his saddles, the saddles do look kind of pinched like a hypo, but I think this is just the effects of the IMG, because this guy again is quite a bit darker than his ghost littermate siblings. Next we have a ghost IMG, and this one is anery plus hypo plus IMG. So you can see he's quite a bit lighter than the anery IMG I just showed you. But the same kind of overall effect, almost like a black and white look. Just a really beautiful looking animal. But this guy, of course, is only going to get darker as he gets bigger. Not quite sure how dark he'll get. Probably not quite as dark as the anery IMG, but definitely darker than he is now. Just a really beautiful example of an IMG morph boa, the Ghost IMG. Not every baby from this litter was IMG, and this is an example of one that wasn't. This is a Sunglow, just a really great classic morph. They call albino plus the hypo, and they have this beautiful orange creamy color, almost like an orange creamsicle. Just a gorgeous animal to look at. These Sunglows also retain the color to adulthood a lot better than the straight albinos. And the Sunglow is a classic morph to get if you're new to morphs, and it's actually really reasonably priced. You know, 20 or 15 or 20 years ago when these first came out, they were thousands and thousands of dollars. Now you can get one, you know, for maybe $400, $500 about, and just a really gorgeous looking animal. So if you're thinking about getting into morphs but not quite sure where to start, Sunglow has a lot of bang for the buck. Of course, you can add IMG into the Sunglow mix, and it just really improves on the appearance of the boa. Because the amelanistic lacks melanin, you're not going to get increasing deposition of melanin, but you're going to get increasing areas with bright deep colors. If you look between the saddles, you can see these dots that in a non-amelanistic boa they would become darker, but in this case the little dots are going to become increased areas of a more deep red color. There's a close-up, and this guy, it was pretty apparent from the day he was born or she was born that this was an IMG, just because of the difference in the appearance compared to the regular Sunglows like the one I showed in the last scene. The tail of this boa is also quite striking. You can see the increased amount of white halo around the orange tail saddles. It really stands out with the IMG. And then the head markings on the IMG Sunglow are really striking. You can see how beautiful the head looks, and this animal just really stood out as one of my favorites that will probably be staying here. Another animal from the litter that's not an IMG, this is a Moonglow, a call albino, anerythristic, and hypo, and this is one of my favorite combo morphs. Just a beautiful looking animal, and they only get better with age as they become this beautiful pale yellow color that almost glows like the glow of the moon. The saddle markings have this really pale, almost lilac color. It's just gorgeous to look at, almost looks translucent. And I know this guy's not an IMG because there's no markings in between the saddles, just that pure off-white color. So I know he's not going to develop into or not going to develop any more IMG pigment like the IMGs do as they age. One more animal. This is a Moonglow IMG. So this animal is just like the one I just showed you, but has the IMG as well. And if you look between the saddles, you can see all those little dots of pigment, or actually the lack of pigment. But the pattern will change in this Moonglow Boa because of the IMG gene. And there's a close-up to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Look between the saddles at those markings. So I have a lot of really nice babies from this litter. It's going to be really hard to pick just a few holdbacks. I always want to keep them all, but of course I only have space for a few more boas in my collection at this point, and can just keep a select few. So most of these are going to be available, and actually they're available right now if you go to my Flickr site. The link is below the video description, but there are pictures and prices and lots of other information about these animals on my Flickr site. So go check them out if you're interested. And if you have any questions or you want to purchase a boa, reach out to me by email. My email is also below the video description. You can also check out my terms of sale. A link to them is, you guessed it, below the video description. So you can see about my policies about doing business if you want to possibly acquire one of these beautiful babies. So I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, shoot me any questions you might have. Thanks for watching and enjoy your boas.